Okay, we are live and we are on main stage, I think. Welcome, everybody. This is the Building Homes in Ventura County, the good, bad, and the ugly. Hopefully we hear a lot of more good than bad or ugly, but we'll explore all of that. I know several of you are maybe supposed to be on this panel, and if you're lurking out there in the audience, try to find the link that it's your My Talk link, then that should access you into the panel side of it. Otherwise, I did want to just get started. We got some great people already on board here, and hopefully we'll add a few more. We have so many, I thought maybe we'd save the time and not go through the deserved introductions. Maybe everybody can do a quick self-introduction as they chime in. But this is a very organic discussion. It's a group of seasoned professionals and a lot of different community-based, developer-based, and other touches that affect housing. And so we're just going to kick it off and let it roll, and hope that we have a lively, good discussion. So hopefully the other panelists can join us. Otherwise, we'll just get going. I'm going to dive right into it, and I'm going to launch a question or discussion about some of the state laws that have been passed, which have some great names, SB 35 and SB 330, which are, depending on how you look at it, it's the state telling localities you will build and you will minimize the efforts that it takes to build. Otherwise, there will be some repercussions. I know locally that's hard, and people say, "Hey, we need local control. It's not one size fits all." But as a development community, we're happy a little bit that there are finally some state mandates that the localities can't slow you down so much. So I'll kick it over to the panelists and a roundtable, and hopefully we have some good discussion. So take it from there. Anybody wants to run with it?
Sure, I'll jump in, Brad.
Sure, thank you,
I can jump in first on this one. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jonathan Frankel. I serve as Vice President of Forward Planning for New Urban West, and we're a residential real estate firm. We've got a project in the city of Camarillo, and have worked in Ventura County for 30 plus years in Moore Park, Simi Valley, Long Canyon, and a bunch of other places. So we're pleased to be here. There are a number, and Brad mentioned too, there are a number of really important state housing bills that have been passed in the last 3 to 4 years. And SB 330, what's called the Housing Crisis Act, is one of the most important ones. And from the development side, it does a number of really important things. But I think one of the most important things is that it basically tells a jurisdiction, hey, once somebody has come forward to your city and said, I would like to build something, and they submit an application, the city can't change the rules of the road in the middle of the game. And that's something that's really important for getting to some certainty. As a business person, you just want to know, how do I comply with the rules? How do I meet the city standards? And oftentimes you'd go through a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years in a project, and the rules would change. And they would say, actually, sorry, we're going to apply this new set of standards to you. And so what SB 330 does, amongst many other things, is say, hey, we're going to lock in the standards. Once you submit your application, we're not going to allow the city to move the goalposts on you and change all these rules. And just for us personally, that's a really meaningful change that allows more certainty and really helps us in our planning process.
Brad, I can add to that. This is Morgan at People Self-Help Housing, and we build in San Luis, Santa Barbara, and Ventura County, and we have a number of new developments in Ventura County right now, and have taken advantage of SB 330 on one of our projects. And it not only does it vest you from some of these rules changing in the future, but also you get feedback, because you get formal feedback from city staff or county staff who look at your initial site plan, and you can then take that feedback, build it into your application, so you don't get hit with a surprise later on. So you get that advantage too of sort of a pre-look at the project. And we're going to apply this same standard or application to a project we're working on now in Santa Barbara County as well. So we're finding it to be a helpful tool, probably to staff as well, I would guess, because they get a chance to see the project up front, give you feedback, and it's not the case of you dumping a new application on them that maybe they wish they had helped you redesign it in some way before you got it on their doorstep the first time.
Yeah, just to chime in really quick on SB 330, I really see it more as a formalization of the partnership that really the development community has with the various municipal agencies that we work with, be it the city, the county, and such. So I think one of the bigger challenges right now that we find in development is that the developer is forced to wear the black hat. So we're coming into a community, oftentimes like with SB 330, we're implementing a existing zoning general plan designation, but we're still seen as the enemy, stop the developer, everything like that. So I think really what it does is it allows the developer not necessarily to be the exclusive person wearing the black hat. So, and really, I'm hoping it gives the local electeds some cover with, the state is the one putting on the black hat and saying, yes, we're going to do this. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to be objective. We're going to conform to the standards that are on the books, but here's, how we're going to do it. So I think that's really the benefit to it, because I think at a large point, what we ask electeds to do, and I saw that Councilmember Ramirez just jumped on, is often very difficult. We're saying, and we're moving to this councilmatic form of government where all of the cities are having districts. And maybe in Los Angeles, city of LA, where each council member is representing 350,000 people, you look at a city, some of these smaller cities like Moore Park or Ojai with their districts, they're representing a few thousand people. If you upset them with you're approving a development, regardless if they like it or not, you might not get reelected. I mean, I think that's a very hard position that we're putting it in. And I think as we get these more formalized authorities coming down from the state, like SB 330, which says, no, this is the law, this is what you're going to do. I hope it really just kind of formalizes that partnership.
Yeah, thank you, Bill and Morgan and Jonathan. One more, I'll repeat. I know we have some people trickling in and we're missing some of our panelists still, but I'm Brad Golden, Chicago Title, and kind of moderating and getting this going. Just a roundtable discussion. We welcome some questions that are real easy to type in, and we'll field those as they come in. Anybody else on the panel want to add to the SB 330 conversation? Carmen, your perspective would be interesting. Yes. Oh, we're not hearing you.
I'm muted.
Oh. Let me see if I can do anything. No, we'll come back to you. Let's see if we can figure it out. So, okay, well, let me move on to kind of a different chat, because I know we'll get some questions here sooner or later. Actually, kind of on that same kind of political side, if you as a developers could wave a magic wand, what perception, like public perception of housing development, would you change? I mean, Bill, you mentioned the black hat, and I know that's changed in the last 25 years. When I was growing up, a new housing development came in and there were balloons and the whole community celebrated. And now it's, who is these people coming into our community and fleecing our area and paving over everything? So what could we change, or how can we change that?
I think initially it's probably some level of education in terms of affordability. I mean, I think the one thing that we get accused of, and I bet Jonathan gets very similar, is all you want to do is build $1 million homes. Like, no, I don't want to just build $1 million homes. You know how hard it is to sell $1 million home? Do you know how many people can actually afford $1 million home? I'd much rather build $400,000, $500,000 homes. So, but the way that that's done in California is really through density, and then, a lot of people think, like, as the development community, oh, you hate SOAR. SOAR is the worst thing, for you guys. And I'm like, no, I live in Ventura. I want, SOAR. I enjoy the fact that I can go buy strawberries, on my way home on it. So I don't want that to change. But the realization of that, if we're going to have that, then you're going to have density within the boundary, and what density is going to allow is we're going to achieve certain levels of affordability that we really all want to see, so that our families can stay here. Right now I have got a freshman in college right now, and I honestly don't think I could tell him that it makes sense not only to stay in Ventura County, possibly California, that maybe you should start your life somewhere else, and I think we have to have those educational conversations so people understand what that really means.
Yeah, this is Darcy. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Darcy, go ahead.
So I think one of the perceptions that I would like to change is the fact that the county and the state and local principalities are not our enemies. I think what we're learning at Habitat is that there is opportunity for accelerated building opportunities when those partnerships are established early on in a project. And I think that historically, we've kind of, at least Habitat, has looked at it as an individual process in regards to our strategic plan of providing affordable housing in the community. And what I've learned since I've been here is that it's critically important to build the partnerships with regards to whether it be land purchase, design ideas, whatever it may be, money or resources that may be available to start those partnerships early on in the project and build those collaborations that over time can establish a long-term relationship that can help not only with those individual projects, but other projects down the road. And I think that it's not, we really have to work hard at making sure that there are collaborations and partnerships that start at the beginning, as opposed to a project is already down the road. I think that the county in our situation and some of the cities we're working with, that has been tremendously successful and allowing us to have less red tape, less roadblocks, as we've already heard, greater opportunities for moving projects through the planning process when there is a partnership and a relationship that has been established from the very beginning. So I think that for us is something that I would like to really see continue to be developed and changed in the county.
Yeah, great. Carmen, can we hear you this time? No, we still can't hear you. Oh, no. We really want to hear you, so keep trying over there. We'll come back to you. So, yeah, that public perception thing. I said it last year at this conference. I'm born and raised in Ventura as well, in East Ventura, which there's been quite a bit of development. And I run across people all the time, and they say, there's so much development going on out here. And I say, well, where do you live? And they give me their coordinates, and I say, yeah, I remember riding my bike through that orchard when I was a kid. And so there's still, you have to have a little bit of room and compassion for people who do want to live in our community, and things do change. And while I respect SOAR as well, you're not evil if you are living on top of a former lemon grove. That's just progress in a lot of ways. And I'm with you, Bill. I don't want it all paved over. My kids are here as well. So anyway, another thing we see here, particularly in Ventura County, and I'm near and dear to this, is a jobs housing balance is kind of out of line here, and we don't have a lot of high paying jobs here to afford even our housing costs, which is fairly affordable compared to other coastal communities. So my question from the development side is Ventura County becoming a retirement community as a whole? And if it's moving that direction, how does that affect development, and what do we build, and how do we look at the shifting demographics of a retirement community? So I'll throw that out there.
I can jump in on that, Brad, because I think
Sure.
Our first speaker this morning, the professor that brought the demographic data, kind of touched on that, right? And he was showing the aging trend in Ventura County, the population trend of actually losing population. Is pointing to that. I don't know if it's drastic. It's not like it's going to happen overnight, but it's trending in that direction, according to him. So that was informative. I was glad he brought that forward. I think what it means is, well, do you build more senior housing? Is that necessary? If you have people in senior housing, do they need certain services, nursing, yard care, whatever the case is, whatever services they need, those folks need housing, and what kind of housing do you build for them? So if you look ahead at that might be one way to plan for it. And, People's Self-Help Housing is strictly affordable housing developer nonprofit. So we look at it from that angle, and we'd be trying to service low-income seniors in that case, or say people that work in landscape maintenance industry, maybe certain healthcare sectors that are maybe lower paying. They would maybe build family units for them, that kind of stuff. So I think that's one possible trend, at least suggested by the data that you can look at in Ventura County. The alternative is, if you have, a vibrant economy with a lot of high-paying jobs, then you got to go the other direction, look at family housing and middle-class housing. But I'll leave it to the market rate developers to talk about those points.
I would argue that I don't think Ventura is necessarily becoming a retirement community. I think it's really potentially becoming more of a bedroom community to the San Fernando Valley and the Goleta, Santa Barbara to the north, where people can't afford to live necessarily in the Santa Barbara area. And then, so you get a really nice way of life here, which is really what I think is driving the housing values up on it. And then, so the question is, are we a bedroom community? Are we going to start dedicating the transportation dollars to start addressing that? Are we going to, look at widening the 101, which I realize is not obviously a popular opinion, or are we expanding rail service on it? But I think that the question becomes really is, that we're really becoming a bedroom community. But I think that's just based on the current demographics. And I'd really like to see what Ventura County looks like in a post-COVID world, where right now some of the hottest selling communities in Southern California are in Ventura County on the market rate side, because you can still be in Fillmore, Santa Paula, and you can be in Los Angeles in an hour, if you're willing to make that drive, but you get a much better quality of life. You're not living in the San Fernando Valley necessarily with the heat and the congestion on it. So I think some of those trends might change in a post-COVID world. Do you want to be in wide open spaces, on it versus being in the valley?
Yeah, from our standpoint, we're proposing a senior housing community in the city of Camarillo right now. We've been processing that for many years, and I think that's in direct response to what we observed, and we also learned from the demographers that we've talked to, and the market analysts that say seniors are the fastest growing demographic in Camarillo. But I think we also know that we always talk about this kind of 2-to-1 ratio, and one of the reasons we love senior housing so much is because for every 1 unit of senior housing, you're freeing up 2 units in the marketplace for younger families and move-up buyers. So you really have, that senior that's downsizing. Maybe they've lived in their community for a long time. They're downsizing. A younger family moves up into that unit and frees up a townhome unit or an apartment unit for someone else. So it's really important to build housing for seniors. I think we see, Shea Homes in Camarillo. They have a project at the seminary. It's wildly successful. There's no way they're going to be able to accommodate all the demand for that. So we do need more options for seniors. And then on the flip side, I would agree with Bill that I think younger professionals looking for housing opportunities are going to say, well, I could get relative value to San Fernando and LA, and maybe I don't have to be at the office at 9 to 5, 9 to 6 every day. I could go in at 11, and maybe I only go in 2 days a week, and and I'm working virtually. So I think that to the extent that we're allowed to build more in Ventura, I see a lot of younger families really looking to this area as being a really attractive option for them.
Like Bill's just saying, I think that's true. But with that type of build or building, you still have the need for supportive building services. So you can build a community that's based on middle class America and still need someone to cut your grass or to work in your restaurants or to work in your commercial areas. They are also in need of housing. And what's difficult about the county is now not only are we in an environment where we're competing for that upper echelon or middle class worker, but we're also starting now to compete for those support service workers as well, because there's not affordable living opportunities for them here in the county as well. I think there's a fine balance here that Bill brought up about related to, do we become a bedroom community and all the ancillary or issues surrounding that, or what is our county going to look like in the future, and how does that impact both affordable housing and low-income housing as we begin to expand in those 2 areas?
Carmen, can we hear you yet? No, we still can't. No, bummer. Okay. Well, you can give us the thumbs up and the waves and all that, and we'll acknowledge that. That's great. Everybody appreciate that. So anybody who's out in the audience, one, appreciate any questions you have to this group, and then two, if you're supposed to be on the roundtable, we're still shy a few people. Try to hit the My Talks button, and then you come into the back office that way. So any other comments or anything about bedroom/retirement community, or you want to move on? Great. We'll move on. Interesting to me, in my simple, I'm fascinated by economics and demographics. I'm not the sharpest guy, so it's hard to digest, but it was interesting. We've been hearing this anecdotally, now we're seeing it in the data, is that California and Ventura County are actually losing population. And we saw some of where they're going, et cetera. Yet housing costs and prices are going up, and demand is through the roof, and even supply is up. So what is the driver? What is going on there? Is it just simply we just live in such a great place, and more people are wanting to pay those prices than even, and that counteracts who's leaving? But I wanted some insight from you guys on that.
I think, Brad, we've kind of seen this stat a few times now at this conference the last few years in different ways, that, in I think it was the 1980s or so, there was a lot of housing being built, and then we just simply have not kept pace in the last couple decades with the housing demand. And we're so far behind that even if you had some people leaving the county or the state at some level, you still haven't hit equilibrium. You're still have more people wanting housing, higher demand than you have supply. And so the population exit is not changing that balance. It's slowly changing it, but we haven't caught up to it yet. And so either we're going to build enough units to satisfy the demand, or people are going to leave. It's just kind of happening very slowly. I think that's kind of the trend that I see when I see this chart kind of presented at this conference every year in a different way. It just reminds me that, we're building a little bit more, but we still haven't got to where we need to be to meet the demand. And I think that's partially reflected in the prices. And then, COVID, we don't really know the full impact of what it's done, but a lot of people anecdotally, the Bay Area leaving to Lake Tahoe. I don't know if you've seen articles on that, but people at Lake Tahoe had like 2 houses available for sale at one point, just because people decide, well, I can work from home in Lake Tahoe, and I'd rather be there than in a city where there's a risk of getting sick. So that might be an effect in Ventura County too. If you can leave LA, work from home, and live in Ventura County where it's a little bit more spread out.
Any other thoughts on that?
Carmen had listed, and she had said that's what happened in Santa Barbara. Entry-level people and service workers with no place to live except in the most substandard housing. And I would add on to that they couldn't even live in the area. They would have to travel to get there.
Definitely saw that happen in Santa Barbara, no doubt about it. Yep. No, I appreciate that, Morgan. And so it's interesting. So you're saying we just still haven't caught up from the pent-up demand, and regardless of losing population, we still have a ways to go. That's fascinating to look at it that way, and I'm sure that's true. So, so moving on to kind of some nuts and bolts, and COVID's obviously top of mind on almost anything we talk about, but technologically wise, there's been a lot of advances in everything, in housing particularly. What do you see as developers to be the greatest influence on housing, technologically speaking, in the next decade? How are you going to build differently, or what's changing the dynamics in how we build in this huge boom we've had technologically?
I'd probably say, as we're moving more and more to the green housing, I think the one thing that we struggle with is the answer is, like, particularly in Ventura, is water. People are asking, you continue to build housing, but you have water. And I agree, while we'll probably add additional housing does increase the demand for water, new housing is 50% more water efficient today than it was, even like, I think it's 25 years ago. There's just that much improvement in terms of the water usage. So we don't use water the same way in the new housing. And I think We're going to continue to see innovations in how we use water. I know Mary's here. She could tell us, in terms of how landscaping is done and the water efficiency. I mean, all of that's greatly improving. I see we're moving to solar. Photovoltaics are now standard. The car charger is, pre-wired, standard. So I think what I would like to see as we continue, if water continues to be that conversation, is reclaimed water becoming a bigger factor. Where we're installing. I worked with a development up in Goleta, and Goleta has a standard where they put the purple pipe in. Anytime they open the road, they put the purple pipe. They don't have they don't have the facility yet, but they're pre-planning for when that facility comes in, and they required for the development we did up there that we install the purple pipe. So that when it becomes available, we can just sub out the meter, put in the reclaimed water meter, and it's there. So I would say really, and I think just kind of closing out, I think the other part is battery technology. As it continues to advance, I think we're going to start seeing that more and more. So I've got solar on my house, and the only thing that I'm upset about in terms of getting solar is I got it in 2019 and then didn't have a bill for close to 6 months. And then everybody started staying home, and now my system's not as I didn't size it properly to have my 3 boys at home Zooming and my wife and everybody. So now I think we're getting about $40. So it's still, it still beats what I was paying before, but it was just kind of funny that I got the system. They looked at my last year of billing. It's okay. Here's the size of system you need. We'll put a little bonus in there so you don't, on the hotter months you don't have it, and then everybody started staying home. So that was definitely interesting. But I think those are the big. It's really water. And I see Councilmember Ramirez was reflecting, microgrids. In a past life, I worked for the city of Huntington Beach, and we played with microgrids on it. It's definitely an interesting way where you can skip a lot of technology and infrastructure and just go straight to the microgrid.
What does that mean, Bill? What's a microgrid?
What we were looking at it. So we were partnering with UCI, and so what they were doing, particularly with UCI, they were involved in hydrogen facility. So you could, and I'm going to use the example they used. So, which was like in China, where you might have a village hasn't run power lines out to wherever they are. They could drop a hydrogen fuel cell in middle of the town, and instead of running miles and miles of power lines from one side of the country to the other, you just ran the power lines from the microgrid to the various homes within the village. On it. So it was a much smaller, less impactful use of infrastructure.
Interesting.
Yeah, I also think that we're looking at, we're going to be building our first smart home, which I think, across the full grid of electricity, water, the whole 9 yards, to be able to give our homeowners the opportunity to control expenses as it relates to all of the technology that those smart homes will be able to provide. I think that's also one of the up and coming technologies. It's already in practice in a number of communities here in the city of Oxnard, but it's something that we're real excited about providing in new homes builds. And I do think, as Bill said, I think with solar being now mandated through building regulations, I think we're moving towards that kind of design of homes where smart homes will become the norm, I would think, in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, just to jump on that, I saw a presentation with the new water heaters where they actually learn how you use the smart water heater learns how you use water in your house.
Absolutely.
And it's preheating the water because it knows that you like to take showers at 6:30 in the morning or whatever it is. And then it's cooling down because it knows, it learns your cycle and everything like that. Just again, at the end of the day, just making it more efficient, more energy efficient.
Yeah, and Brad, in the longer term, I'll be really interested to see. I mean, I think a lot of these sustainability features are fantastic, and will be interesting to see how they're incorporated. But from a vertical construction standpoint, I mean, building and construction is actually one of the industries that's been the least innovative over the many decades, right? I mean, we build vertically in terms of framing a house, 2x4s, lumber. The process that we use today isn't very much different than it was in 1960, 70, 80, and consider advancements in technology elsewhere, right? I mean, I talked to my dad the other day about, hey, when you were a kid, and he grew up in LA in the 50s. When you were a kid, could you ever imagine you'd have a computer in your pocket that would be a telephone where you could call everyone and connect with the whole world in one click of a button? And if I told you that, what would you have said to me then? He said, I would have told you were the craziest person in the world. I could have never believed that would have been possible. But we basically build houses the same way that we did back then. And so I think, modular construction, 3D printing, are we going to have a regulatory framework that allows for some of these innovations? I have a good friend of mine who manufactures modular units in China, and he imports them to the US, a full-blown 1-bedroom, 600 square foot modular unit. He can get it here for $35,000 to the US. Now, in California, he can't do it because the building code does not allow him to use that particular modular unit, CARB regulations, a whole bunch of other things. He's subject to mobile home regulations and a bunch of other stuff. So the jurisdictions won't actually allow him to install these, but he ships them to Texas and Arkansas and all over the rest of the country, and people can install a unit, he said, in some cases for less than $50,000. So those are the types of interesting ideas, especially on the affordable side. And I think those type of innovations, particularly, Darcy made a really great point earlier about or related to our population. And I think, yes, people are leaving, but I think we need to look at who's leaving. And it's those people, those working families, those people that are in our service industries and our restaurant industry. And those are the families that are leaving. The working class professional that can commute via Zoom, that's the guy that has a lot of opportunities. But it's the backbone of our economy that's leaving. And so I think the question also is, what type of community do we want to be? Do we only want to be a place for relatively wealthy people, or do we want to make room for everyone in our community? And in order to do that, you have to be able to be nimble enough to regulate in a way that allows for all these opportunities to create that space for everyone.
Carmen asked, but who is going to do the essential work? And I agree with her, because if you don't have people that can be here, who's going to do that work? And there's already so many of those people that have left the area. That's why if you're building, you're having a hard time finding labor to get anything done.
I would agree with Jonathan on the breakthrough technology front, because I've been waiting for, or been observing, if you will, modular technology and 3D printing technology, which is kind of in its infancy right now, as somehow breaking us through this pattern of ever increasing cost of construction, ever increasing cost of materials. Something has to give. And usually in our economy, somebody comes through with a new technology, something that breaks through that really changes the game. And we haven't taken advantage ourselves of any of those. We've looked very seriously at modular, spoken to modular manufacturers about how to do it, and haven't found an opportunity where it would work for us yet. But we're keeping an eye on that. And I know that the Santa Barbara County Housing Trust Fund would love to do a pilot 3D printing project. They're looking for a piece of land to do a single family home, bring out a 3D printer. They're working with somebody back east to do a demonstration project. And so they're looking for a piece of land to do that. And, I'm kind of excited to see what they are able to do, because they can build a house in a couple of days and, with some concrete, and then they put a roof on it and you got a single family home for a fraction of the price of normal build.
Well, affordability, both on the building side and of course paying for it side, is huge here, particularly in California. But I know I was a part of, on the title side, of an affordable housing project a few years ago. And that affordable housing project, where the land was given to them, equated in the end to costing the developer about $650,000 per door to build 100% affordable project. So that to me is not affordable for anybody. Whether I'm going to live in it or it's subsidized, or whether some of us on this panel have to build it. So besides land cost, which we know is out of control here in California, why is it so much more expensive to build here in California? Is it simply a regulation side? Is it a timing? Is it the financing? Is it labor? Is it supply? What is it? All of that? Why is it so expensive to build here?
All the above.
Yeah. I mean, it is all of the above. It's definitely all of that. And I think it's just, to a certain extent, we all care so much about it, that we've created this environment where that has all become part of the routine. And I think what's interesting, again, kind of going back to as we go to these councilmanic districts, I think it's going to be harder and harder for council members really in those districts to approve a project, because you're going to get elected by, a couple hundred votes or something like that. And you upset a couple hundred people because you're bringing a new development into it. It's just going to be, more difficult. I mean, I think ultimately you might be looking as the state continues to implement like SB 330, SB 35, and then you got, Senator Wiener's, out there with his, is that it's continuing to, I think it's going to move to a regional level almost potentially if we don't figure out how to make building easier and deal with those issues that you said, Brad. All of the above. I mean, it really is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, people. I think a lot of the things that are put onto housing, everybody looks at as a good thing. We should put solar panels on a housing project. We should put sprinklers in there. And maybe those are all good things. The Title 24 green requirements continue to ratchet up over time. So your insulation requirements, your windows, et cetera, all improve over time at a cost. And, as an affordable housing developer, we certainly want to be as cost effective as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then on our side, not only do we have those physical cost pressures, we also have soft cost pressures because we may have, if you're doing a bond project in affordable housing, you got to issue bonds, and it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to issue bonds. There's no reason to use bonds with 4% tax credits other than Congress said so, right? There's no mechanism or reason to use that product other than it's now legislated. And so it costs you $200,000-$400,000 to even get the tax credits because you have to use bonds. So that's an example of, somebody legislating something that adds cost to the project that's a little bit hidden. And then, we haven't talked about it too much, but infrastructure, each project is charged development impact fees, which can be very expensive. It could be $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 a unit on our side. And it's to pay for infrastructure costs that maybe have been neglected over time, or maybe they try to put on a project, especially affordable housing, certain neighborhood infrastructure upgrades that maybe have been neglected over time, and then that project has to kind of bear the burden of that. So I think spreading out the burden of the infrastructure costs would be nice for all developers, really, because some housing projects, some developers are being asked to foot the bill maybe more than what's fair or proportional to what they're doing.
Yeah, at Habitat, obviously we build to sell, so we're not able to benefit from the tax benefits that are associated with, some of the builds that are being done in the county. I think that the cost that is the increase of cost, in particular with Ventura County, is due to a number of things. I think one, the fires have allowed for there to be an elevated competition among professionals that are builders in our community in regards to subcontractors, which drives up the square footage price of our builds anyway, if I could say that. The cost of materials continues to grow and become much more costly as it relates to, in particular, new types of plywoods and those kinds of things that continue to be more costly. And then we also have, as was already talked about, the continuing increase in fees that go into the coffers of the cities and the county as it relates to the resources needed to run the community. So I think it's a combination of all those things. And even at Habitat, where we use a lot of volunteers to help us associated with our low-income build projects, it's still a losing a revenue generator for us for each house that we build. And I think that is one thing that I think we're going to have to look at as we kind of move forward, is as we look at the 80 AMI and lower, how do we make houses affordable, at least for our clients? how do we make houses affordable that we can build in a way where they're not bankrupting nonprofit builders like myself?
Well, in the chat, a good friend of mine, local builder Henry, said some of the cost increases have forced them into uniformity, and which is interesting because we all want these vibrant, kind of cool-looking, diverse neighborhoods. Yet, if the cost comes into it, and you have to, either bare minimum break even, depending on where you're coming from, but you're forced into this uniform building just to keep your costs down, and which goes against everything the community kind of wants. So, and not that there's any, magic answer there, but the cost of building here is, and I just got back. I had to go to Texas for a water polo tournament for my son, and of course, Texas is, kind of a pejorative here in California for a lot of us, but how you see a pretty nice suburban home out there for $200,000 that's 4 years old, and you just think, how on earth, land cost is one thing, I get that, we take that out, but it still seems, a 2,000-foot home, how are they building and selling, and somebody bought a house for $100 a square foot? I know we're not building anywhere near that basically here, so it's tough in California is bottom line, and we end up paying that weather tax, no doubt about it. So, well, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Somebody has a question in the chat, and it may be behind a little bit, but she's been waiting a while. And it says, can the panel share which cities in Ventura County have ADU ordinances already in place?
I think if we ask Councilmember Ramirez to give us a thumbs up, I think the state has mandated that everybody have those in place. So that's across the board in every jurisdiction already in place.
Thank you.
Well, let me ask, since we're on the ADU, from the developer side, are you incorporating ADUs into future projects? And if so, is that penciling, or how's that looking neighborhood planning wise?
I've had some experience. I did a community in the city of Ventura that had a over garage secondary unit that could be used as a rental. I mean, it is an effective, it was a very popular seller, had the small kitchenette. I know Williams Homes just completed the farm community not too long ago, and they had in their larger units over garage, they had detached garages with the units above on it. So I think you're starting to see it get incorporated more and more into some of the designs on it. I think the challenge really on the for sale side is, we just generally don't see the large lots anymore on it. So I really think you're seeing, if you're going to do what it would be a traditional ADU, as on some of the existing housing stock that has some of the larger yards already in place on it. But, in the new build, I think you're seeing it. I think Lennar has they had a project in Simi Valley that included intergenerational living with the lockout unit on it. So it's definitely coming around. I mean, it's, I think there's a demand. It's just really getting the size of the home that can allow it.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to, in our projects at least, I don't think for exactly the reason Bill mentioned, just smaller lots. I don't think we're going to see, a ton of ADUs incorporated, although, kind of separate entrances, kind of, suites where you have, maybe a ground floor suite in a townhome where a younger family could have a parent live there and help out with childcare and things like that. I think that's valuable, but ADUs are really valuable to add to the existing housing stock. But what's interesting is I'm seeing now in also all cities in California now are updating what's called their housing element to the general plan, which is basically the state mandated blueprint for, how is each city going to accommodate its projected housing need. And a lot of cities are looking to ADUs as a little bit of a get out of jail free card. They're saying, hey, well, we're anticipating all these ADUs to be built. And so that is going to satisfy our moderate or above moderate or below moderate, low income housing requirement. And I hope there are lots of ADUs built. I think that's a fantastic tool. All cities have to do it. But, for those city officials, and if any of you know city officials that are looking about, hey, let's plan housing, over reliance on the ADUs, I think we're going to kind of exacerbate the shortage that we already have.
Well, I think you've got 3 cities going through general plan updates in the county right now. You've got Moore Park, Thousand Oaks, and Ventura, all at different stages in terms of updating their general plans. particularly their housing elements. You've got the new RENA numbers. I think I haven't heard anything yet, but I think all the cities still have to have everything in place by October of 21. Their new housing elements. I think Carmen is that, yes. Mm-hmm. So, and then those RENA numbers are really substantial coming down. So it'll be interesting to see, in particular, those 3 jurisdictions, because they're updating their housing elements actively with their general plan updates. But every city is in that process, and I think the state is holding a lot of the agencies more accountable to where you can't just say we're going to do 50% of our units as ADU. They want to show us how that's going to happen. Are you giving away permits, or they want to see the accountability to it.
And Carmen just put in the chat that Oxnard's RENA numbers are over 8,500 units is what they're going to be required to build. And Oxnard's been building fairly heavily. So so to build 8,500 more units in a city the size of Oxnard, over what is it, the next 8 years, I believe. So do the math. That's over 1,000 units per year on average. That's a lot, particularly for Ventura County. So yeah, the RENA numbers, and once again, going back to where we kicked this off, where you have some teeth from the state with SB 330 and 35, that's going to be pretty aggressive throughout the state on the development side. So I had to go back to the ADU thing real quick. I toyed with the idea of doing an ADU at my house, but I'm definitely waiting till my kids are gone, because I know they'll just try to slide right into it, and then they'll say they left the house, but they'll just be out and back somewhere. So I'm waiting on that for sure. maybe mom will move in.
I just want to add that as an affordable housing developer on the multifamily side, the ADUs are kind of not applicable there. And we do have a self-help single family home program, and like Habitat, we sell those units to the owner builder. And so they may be free to add an ADU in the future, but it's not, anything that we place upon them. So we kind of observe it as, sounds like a great tool. We hope people take advantage of it, but we're not able to really use it in our line of work.
If I can jump in as well, Brad, this is Erica.
Yeah, Erica. Uh-huh.
I don't represent a housing developer, which is why I've been a little quiet. I work for the County of Ventura. I work on a program called the Tri-County Regional Energy Network. So the perspective I bring to the conversation is really around energy. But anecdotally, I live in Ojai. The ADU conversation has been big here, as well as tiny homes. And I agree with Jonathan and Morgan. I think it's a good tool to have, but it's not going to solve our problems. And I think we need to balance this with quality of housing. And I think going back to your question about, why is this all so expensive? I think regulations are obviously a huge part of why our housing costs are so high, but the trade-off for regulations is quality, right? So cramming people into tiny homes may help with some of these issues, but quality of life is important too. And with the energy code and that perspective that I bring, we know it can add a lot of costs, but it can also really reduce long-term operating costs and lower household energy costs. So I guess my feedback is that, regulations certainly can increase costs, but working on a county program that receives state funding and brings that funding back to our local region, there are a lot of resources if you can be creative and tap into it. And we're actually partnered with People Self-Help Housing to provide a lot of funding for heat pump hot water heaters for an affordable housing project that they're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Erica. That's great. Now kind of maybe moving over into some more maybe fun stuff and futuristic type stuff. I know one of the major hurdles and development stoppers and maybe NIMBYs is traffic and parking. And those are, one of the two, along with maybe water, that get thrown into everything. Deservedly so on a lot of levels. But we're seeing these self-driving cars and, and Uber and everything else looks like they're pretty real, and they're moving along at a pretty darn good pace. Matter of fact, they're out there right now, and some will argue if we're ready for it yet, but it definitely is going to happen, and I can see where it will affect the housing market. We end up building these three car beautiful garages to house our cars, and sometimes our cars sleep better at night than maybe we do, and we're designing houses around these pig nose type garages in front. And so my question to our group here is is that going to change? And how is that going to affect development? Do we have smaller streets? Do we not have these giant garages? Do we have less cars? Do we need less cars? And how will that affect future projects?
I think the biggest change is going to be, which has already happened. It started July 1, was really when we went from level of service to analyze traffic on new developments to vehicle miles traveled, where it's actually incentivizing development, within the urban cores areas, and you're not dinged as much. So I think the traffic consideration, while people don't like it, is that it's going to be less. I mean, on it. In terms of parking, that'll be an interesting thing. I mean, at this point, Ventura County is not necessarily interconnected. If I want to go to Moore Park from Ventura, I got to get in my car and I got to drive the 118, to get there. So there's not a public transportation route that's really going to get me there and effective. Same thing with Santa Paula, Fillmore, and I think one of the interesting things too is like Oxnard. So even though I live in Ventura and Oxnard's right there, there's actually only 4 ways to cross to get to Oxnard from Ventura. And it's the 118, the 101, Victoria or Harbor. Those are the 4 ways to get to Oxnard from Ventura. So we really got to probably work on the interconnection between our communities before we're going to start seeing the cars, go away, in my opinion, right now, for Ventura County specifically. I mean, I think you're starting looking at like the Valley, LA core. Yeah, you're probably going to start seeing the cars, where you're going to get that starting out there, and I think, I know Oxnard just approved, like Amazon's finally coming out here, right? So it's tested, and, so I'm pretty excited. I think we might be getting 1-day service here pretty quick, in Ventura County on our stuff, or a couple hours. In LA, they got some of the same day stuff. So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to me, Brad. I think a couple of things on this. One, autonomous vehicles present, I think, an interesting challenge in that, in my view, I think that actually induces more car trips, not less. And so that's completely contrary to what the state wants to do. I mean, effectively, autonomous vehicles makes driving more convenient, right? And if you want to live now, let's say you had a 45-minute commute, all of a sudden you're going to say, you know what? If I live 2 hours away from where I work, perhaps, I can hop in my autonomous car. Maybe I'll take a nap. Maybe I'll read a book. Maybe I'll do something else. It actually induces more traffic. And, I don't know. I don't think anybody wants the future where we're all just sitting in congestion all the time in our autonomous vehicles going 15 or 20 miles an hour, in that type of network. But I think that it presents that potential, and it also presents a lot of potential for developments in areas where a lot of advocates at the state, especially climate advocates, don't want to see development in those areas that are further away from jobs, further away from infrastructure, which leads to potentially more emissions. We'll see whether electric vehicles can solve some of that. So I think that'll be interesting, but I don't sense that, certainly not in Ventura County, that there's the political will to invest in public infrastructure and transit in the way that you would need to make transit as convenient as the car. And that's really the bottom line: is the public willing to invest the dollars in public transit in a meaningful way to say, hey, it's not going to take me 4 times as long to get to my destination to hop on a bus. And until it can be competitive, the last 60, 70 years of entirely auto-oriented development makes driving highly convenient. At peak times, the freeway is congested, but like many times a day, I'm flying around from Camarillo all the way up to Santa Barbara in a very short amount of time, relatively, right? And that's, so the freeway system actually is very, very efficient in 20 hours a day. And so, that I think until you see that level of investment, traffic is going to continue to be a little bit of a boogeyman for development. People aren't willing to invest to make it better, but they oppose projects on the basis of traffic. And so you don't get houses built here. So then they go farther out. Then they go to, Central Coast. Then they go into the, Inland Empire. Then they go all these other places that are contrary to climate goals. And so it's a very vexing kind of, has been an intractable problem for a long time.
We haven't adjusted our developments, Brad, to, autonomous vehicles. What we have done is, there's the electric vehicle charging stations that are going in as part of the building code. We are kind of planning ahead, thinking, well, there might be an increase in electric vehicles, so we might plumb for future charging stations to be installed at some point. And as far as parking goes, it's one of the most common questions we get. We just did a public meeting a couple nights ago, and there's a question from a member of the public. We actually overparked on that project just based on the neighborhood dynamics. So as we're not just developer, we also property manage. We're the general contractor. We own these things forever. So we have every interest to make sure there's no parking problems. We don't have an interest in underparking it because it's going to be somebody else's problem down the road. So we make sure that we're real careful about putting what we think are the right amount of parking spaces. Now, in a urban core where there's good bus service, we might feel comfortable reducing those parking spaces, and maybe we'll put extra bike storage. There's good bike paths. People are working close to the jobs, and so there's alternative methods that people do use, even though it's not as efficient as Jonathan pointed out. But when we're in other towns, like I'll call them a car town, it's more spread out, and you rely on cars. We're not going to reduce those parking spaces quite as much because we know the reality is you're going to have 2 vehicle households that maybe need to get to work. Or conversely, if we have a homeless project, an SRO that is specifically for people that are homeless, they can't even afford a car. So we know that we can reduce that parking down to very minimal. Maybe a handful of people have a vehicle, but most of them are going to bike or take a bus where they need to go. And so for us, it's situational. But I think the autonomous vehicle thing is coming our way. I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't really tell you how it's going to impact us. I know there's going to be an impact, but we're not planning it into our projects at this moment in time.
Got it.
Brad, one more quick point on the relationship between parking and traffic, which is an interesting one, is that, people will say we need to have an excess of parking. Like Morgan mentioned, in my project, I need to have more parking than is required by code. And well, what does that do? That incentivizes people to drive everywhere, right? And so as a result of that, you're creating congestion, which then people say you shouldn't approve this project because there's too much traffic, right? So there's this direct relate, and they're using that, right, to now oppose any development altogether because there's too much congestion. But it's a result of that parking policy and our transportation policy and the divestment in public transit that results in that congestion. And so there's a direct relationship between the two. You can't say I want more parking and I want less congestion, because those two are actually at odds.
That's a great point. Earlier, we had a session with my friend Nick Deitch, and he pointed out just the massive parking lots we have. Not even whether the mall is being successful or not, but you go to the Kohl's or whatever, and you just have a sea of parking that is 99.9% of the time not full. I find that as ugly as any modern 4-story building that's being planned in a downtown core. And so I'm always struck that how NIMBYs don't look at this sea of black asphalt that's never used as being as ugly for a community, or it's uglier than a possible 4-story modern new progressive type building. So hey, we're right up against our time. Excellent stuff, guys. I really appreciate your time and expertise. This conference is great, and I hats off to everybody who's made it happen. I know our new virtual world here, and I think we for the most part pulled it off. Would have loved to have heard from Carmen and some of the others, but really appreciate your time and expertise, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.